Xenu Xenu. This is a follow-up again on Kyva Go's uh, history lesson. um, Fundamental attribution error. Um, I just want to say in doing these videos and studying psychology that I am not at all qualified to give expert opinions on this subject matter. All I'm doing is going over the information, relating it however I can to Scientology. Um, that's all. So, fundamental attribution error. The example they give in the Wikipedia page is you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off, and you say, "Oh, that asshole! You know, he must be a jerk because he pulled in front of you." You know, not a nice thing to do. That is fundamental attribution error, because the presumptions, because there's a presumption there that because he cut you off, he's an asshole. But there are, possibly infinite number of variables that could have caused him to pull in front of you. For instance, he may have been going to the hospital because his son or daughter was being delivered and he was in a big hurry. I mean, I've done that. When my son was born, and when my daughter was born, I mean, I drove real fast several times to the Goche campus, and I'm sure people were like, "That guy's a dick." But I had a pregnant wife in the car, and she was in a lot of pain, and and scared, really scared. So that's fundamental attribution error. So my thoughts on that relating to Scientology are that the biggest one is that Scientologists are stupid, because I see it I've seen it all over the internet. I've even seen it on Scientologists, like ex-Scientologists forums, where people who are allowed to be part of the forum that aren't Scientologists, or who weren't Scientologists, never were. They call them never ends. So the never ends sometimes will post things like, "I can't believe you're so stupid," or they usually get moderated very quickly, but they pop up in other places too, like on Operation Clambake, where which was a big turnoff for me. Initially, I avoided that website. I only went to it for the OT3 materials, because there's a lot of hate, attributed to anyone having been a Scientologist. Because how could you be so stupid? And believe me, you do feel stupid after you've come to the realization that it's all a money thing. It's all a money scam, and you actually believed in it. But I'll also say that as far as people in Scientology being stupid, the ruse that you fall for is it's so sick. It's so sick, because it preys on people who really genuinely want to make the world a better place. I mean, there are those, even in missions and orgs, that for one reason or another, even though they don't get paid well, or they're not in the executive branch, and thus can't guarantee their income, there are people who are in Scientology seemingly because they get to have authority over people and make them do things. So there's a mix. There's a mix of both. There's the people that truly believe that, in the statement of Scientology, a world without criminality, hold on, I'll pull that up because this is important for what I'm talking about. And that's an interesting word to use. Criminality, a world without criminality. Scientology. There you go. a world without war. Crime and insanity. The mechanism by which Scientology plans to achieve this goal is by the process of clearing the planet, which will be explained more. This is Operation Clambake, a world without, and then I think that comes from the reference, a world without Scientology. There's a lot of good information on Operation Clambake, which is xenu.net. Or no, I'm sorry, totally different sites. I think they just attributed to this other site. So xenu.net /archive/world_without. That's what I'm looking at. It's a really, really good article. It's not short. It's a very long article to read, but if you just Google xenu.net, a world without, then you should be able to find it. It's simply too much for me to go over, but I wanted to quote that from the World Without Scientology reference. So you got two different types, really. It's strange. It's almost like polar opposite type personalities. John, one of the guys that I worked with, seemed to really like to take charge and dominate. Whether it was on a book selling thing or a registration cycle or building the mission in Melrose. He's gung-ho all the time, and the executives like that. The executives love that. They like someone to push the staff and be a motivating force. And when I say motivating, I mean punitively motivating. If you do not perform, you're punished in some form or another. When we were finishing up the Melrose mission before the main event, we literally finished it days before the event, maybe 2 days before the event, because we were there 24/7, 8 people, and John Jones would wake us up. We'd be working all day, but then when we go to sleep at like 2, 3 in the morning, we're tired. We're sleeping on carpet, for a while there we were sleeping outside on insulation on the balcony. But once we got all of the things inside built, course room built, and auditing rooms built, and all that stuff, we were sleeping in the ED's office on sleeping bags, or when we got carpet, we slept on the carpet or in sleeping bags on the carpet. But John Jones would come and ring a bell, ding, 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 or a horn. He had a horn. He drenched us with water. And this was like Sea Org type behavior, I forget what he called. Watch quarter station bill So like he'd, get us up just to be ready to do nothing. Like, get up, we got something to do. We got a cycle we need to do. And this would be after an hour maybe of sleeping, 2 hours. Just when you get to sleep, they wake you up. Muster, essentially, is a muster. Part of sleep deprivation, part of keeping people in line and controllable. So, there's that type of person. And those are the people that I don't necessarily think realize how. I don't think they realize a lot of things, really. But most of all, like, I don't think that they were always sincere in clearing the planet or helping people. Let's just say helping people. Of course, these people would talk about pre-clears, like people at the missions or orgs, as if they were pieces of harvestable money, like in the meetings, the executives or those types of people would talk about any kind of assets that could be obtained, and converted into cash and donated, and then they would scheme up a way to sell a product to the individual that they're talking about. So, and they go through the list of everyone that's on lines. That's a term that means anyone who's a public Scientologist at that mission. So anyone who's on lines, you go through a list and you figure out how much you can extract from them by use of mental coercion and hypnosis, whatever. Just depends on how well they're hypnotized as to how much they'll give. But all gave some gave all. Horrible parallel there, but it's true. So back to the fundamental attribution error. The Scientologists are stupid because they're falling for this stupid cult. On the other side of the coin, the people who are there based on this concept of a world without war, crime, and insanity, that is a very ambitious statement. And you might think that someone who would support a cause like that would have the sense to know that Scientology would not be the way to do it. Unfortunately, there are many effective means that Scientology has at its disposal, which are psychological in nature, and anyone can actually fall prey to it. It just depends on what particular state of mind you're in at the time, and are they able to identify it and draw you in with how they have to be skilled. They have to kind of be skilled at communication. But I've seen the whole gamut of types of people. Like I said, we had actually, I think the video got cut off earlier. I didn't talk about Harvey at the Buenaventura mission, but Harvey, he had some mental disability, and there were people with mental disabilities at the PAC base, and so in those cases, it's not their fault. I mean, it's just sad, honestly. In many cases, they just needed some place to go, and they didn't have family to care for them, so they ended up there. And they're essentially, slaves. They don't get to do much. Harvey would clean everything. He was the janitor, and they would also ensure that he would go on course because they wanted him to. I mean, it was relatively easy because, and I don't mean to be derogatory here, but he had a mental disorder that his mental faculties were not what were they were far below normal, and it made him very easy to manipulate. He was a very kind person. He was a very, very nice person. And then you have people who are intelligent that go for this stuff. That they look at that and they see a world without war, crime, and insanity. And if you have had a substantial, they call them wins in Scientology, but if you've had a substantial change of a belief, like, in other words, like whenever something seems to have worked for you, and you feel like a relief from something, like say for instance, someone comes in and had been raped, and they go into an auditing session, and they talk about the rape, and they go through every detail over and over and over and over and over and over again until there's no charge left on it. They call it charge, but that's therapy. When I went to therapy for PTSD after I got diagnosed in 2015, essentially that's what we did. We talked about the incident until it didn't have any emotional control over me anymore, or at least a great deal lessened. And from post-traumatic stress, you learn to have growth, because you can't undo trauma. Like, when you have trauma, generally it'll affect your whole body, whether it's a wreck or being shot at, or whether it's physical or mental, is what I'm saying, because there are certain mental traumas that will affect the neurochemistry in your body, and the way that you think about things. Someone being raped, they generally have trust issues. Someone being shot at is nervous a lot, has a lot of nerve problems, or antsy all the time. The type of people who are a lot of times very active and outgoing in life. People with PTSD. There's all kinds of really brilliant people who have and motivated people who have had very troubled past. Elon Musk was thrown down a flight of stairs when he was a kid. Changed him forever. Now he's making spaceships. And all I'm saying is that the fundamental attribution error, and my thoughts on that as it relates and pertains to Scientology, is that I really wish the fundamental attribution error was not that people who are in Scientology are stupid. But I can wish in one hand and piss in the other and see which one fills up, is what my dad always used to say. Because I just don't see it happening that way. Just like unless there's a tragedy. Unless there's a tragedy, like the Jim Jones cult, or the Heaven's Gate cult. You know, some people are sympathetic, and some people are like, "You stupid," you know, like, it's always going to be that way. Even if there is a tragedy, there's going to be some people like, "Yeah, well, they got what they deserved for joining a stupid cult." But having been in a cult, and you know, I mean, I've watched the Marshall Applewhite videos, and I get it, you know, and maybe, you know, in my very first video, seemed like the most popular video that I have. So I'm talking about that feeling of feeling completely stupid for having been a part of it. And at that time, I still felt that way. But that is fundamental attribution error in Scientology for a lot of people, is that they think that anyone involved with it or is in it is stupid. And I disagree with that. And I think that'll pretty much cover that. Let me see if that would make me halfway through. Not even close. This is really awesome. Thank you, Kyva. See you on the next one.